You know that feeling when you think you know someone, but then one moment just flips everything you thought was true? Yeah, that happened to me. And the worst part? It wasn't some big explosive argument or dramatic blow-up. It was one sentence. One single sentence from my stepmother that made me understand I was never really part of this family the way I thought I was. My name is Tanya, and I'm going to tell you a story that's been sitting in my chest for a while now. It's not easy to talk about, especially when it involves family, but I think you need to hear it, because maybe you've felt something similar. Maybe someone you trusted just erased you, and you're wondering if that was on you or on them. So let me take you back to where this all started. I was 13 when my parents got divorced. I know that's not unique or anything. Lots of kids go through it. But when you're that age, everything feels like the end of the world. I lived with my mom most of the time, but I spent weekends with my dad. He was trying to keep his life together, getting back on his feet. About 2 years after the divorce, he met someone. Her name was Gloria. She seemed nice. She had this daughter who was 16 at the time, and they seemed like a good fit for my dad. He was lonely, and she came with family already built in. I thought that was good. I thought that meant he wouldn't be sad anymore. My dad and Gloria got married when I was 15. By then, I was staying with them more often anyway. The plan was eventually I'd live with them full-time and visit my mom during holidays and some weekends. That's what blended families do, right? You blend, you come together, you become one unit. That's what they told me, at least. For a while, it actually worked. Gloria wasn't the warmest person I'd ever met, but she was fine. She made dinner most nights. She helped me with homework sometimes. Her daughter, Keisha, and I weren't super close, but we got along. We shared a bathroom and we'd watch TV together sometimes. It wasn't like having a sister or anything, but it was okay, normal, I guess. Things started shifting when I was about 17. Nothing huge, just small things. Gloria would make comments about how much I ate, or she'd mention that I should probably clean up my room because company might come over. She started making plans on days I was supposed to be there and not telling me, then acting surprised when I showed up. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself she was just adjusting to having a teenager in the house. My dad seemed happy, and that's what mattered. By the time I was 18, I was working part-time and going to community college. I was trying to figure out my life, Some days I'd stay at my mom's, some days I'd stay at my dad's. I wasn't always at the house, but it was still technically my home. I had my stuff there. My dad had told me it was always going to be my room, that this was my home. Then Keisha got engaged. It was exciting news. Her fiancé was a good guy, and when she told me about it, she seemed genuinely happy. She showed me her ring, and I hugged her. I meant it. I was happy for her. And naturally, I assumed I'd be part of the engagement party. We lived in the same house. I'm her stepsister. Of course I'd be invited to celebrate this huge moment in her life. But here's where it gets weird. About 2 weeks after she got engaged, I started noticing conversations stopping when I walked into rooms. Keisha and Gloria would be talking, and then they'd see me and go quiet. I'm not paranoid or anything, but it was obvious. One day I walked into the kitchen and heard Gloria on the phone saying something about keeping the guest list tight and just close family. When she saw me, she hung up really quick and smiled in that way that doesn't reach your eyes. You know what I mean? That fake smile that actually makes you feel worse than if they'd just ignored you. I asked Keisha about it. I was like, "So when's the party? I want to help you plan it or whatever." She got all uncomfortable and started giving me vague answers. "Oh, nothing's really decided yet. We're still figuring it out. It might be really small." Every answer was like pulling teeth, and every answer made me feel smaller and smaller. My dad wasn't home much during this time. He was working longer hours, and when he was home, Gloria seemed to make sure we didn't have much time alone. Looking back, I think that was intentional. I think she was avoiding the moment when he'd find out what she was planning. Or rather, what she wasn't planning to include me in. I started paying attention after that. I noticed that Gloria would get deliveries and hide the boxes. I'd hear her and Keisha talking about colors and themes. One time I caught them looking at a Pinterest board with decoration ideas before they quickly closed the browser. They were definitely planning something big. But for who? And why was I being left out? The thing that really should have told me everything was when Keisha got a new dress and wouldn't let me see it. She said it was for the party, but she wouldn't show me. She wouldn't even tell me what color it was. Why would you hide something like that from your stepsister unless you didn't want her there? Unless you were planning to celebrate without her? I tried to ask Gloria directly. I remember this moment so clearly because it's when I first felt that small voice inside saying something was really wrong. I said to her, "Gloria, I want to help plan Keisha's engagement party. When are we doing it? What can I do?" And she just looked at me like I'd asked her something in another language. She was genuinely confused for a second, and then her face went blank. She said, "Oh, well, we haven't really talked about you being involved yet." Haven't really talked about it. Not, "You're absolutely involved." Not, "Of course you are." Haven't really talked about it. I felt my stomach drop, but I tried to play it cool. I said, "Okay, well, let me know when that conversation happens." She nodded and walked away. That was it. Just walked away. For the next week, I kept telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe they were planning something small, just for immediate family. But then why wouldn't they have just said that? Why all the secrecy? Why the uncomfortable looks and the quick exits from rooms? The day I found out the truth was a Saturday. I was at the house and I'd gone into the kitchen looking for something to eat. My phone was on the counter and a text came through from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo of an invitation. A beautiful invitation with Keisha's name and her fiancé's name in elegant script. And it was for an engagement party. This Saturday, at a venue downtown. 75 guests. But that wasn't what made me feel like the floor had disappeared beneath me. What got me was seeing whose phone the text came from. It was from Aunt Lorraine, my dad's sister. She was asking someone if they'd gotten their invitation and confirming attendance. 75 guests. And somehow I was finding out from a text that wasn't even meant for me. I just stood there holding my phone, staring at that invitation. My hands were shaking. I couldn't even feel my face. My stepsister was having a big party with 75 people, and no one in this house had bothered to tell me about it. Not a text. Not a casual mention. Nothing. I heard Gloria come down the stairs, and something in me just snapped. I walked right up to her and I asked, point blank, "Am I invited to Keisha's engagement party?" I showed her the text. She saw that invitation, and I watched her face change. She knew she'd been caught. For a second, her guard was down, and I could see something there. Not guilt, exactly. More like annoyance that she had to deal with this. She took a breath and said, "Well, Tanya, it's just a get-together. Nothing fancy, just some close family and close friends. Just a get-together." Those words, they're burned into my memory now. Because we both knew she was lying. We both knew it wasn't just a small thing. We both knew that 75 people didn't qualify as a casual get-together, but that one sentence told me everything I needed to know about how she saw me. I stood there for what felt like forever. I said, "But I'm not invited?" And she couldn't even look at me when she answered. She said, "We're keeping it really intimate, and honestly, you're not really part of Keisha's inner circle. You're hardly ever here. I didn't think you'd want to come anyway." That last part, that killed me, because she was taking my distance, the distance that came from her, making me feel unwelcome, and she was using it as the reason to leave me out. She was making my survival mechanism into the reason to exclude me, and she was right about one thing. By that point, I wasn't there much. But I wasn't there much because being there didn't feel like being home anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there and asked her, "Did my dad know about this?" She hesitated, and that hesitation was an answer in itself. She said, "Your father trusts my judgment about family matters." So that was a no. I went to my room and I just sat on my bed. I tried to process what was happening. This woman, who I'd lived with for years, who I called by her first name out of respect for her position in the house, had deliberately and intentionally planned a major family event and excluded me. Not because I did anything wrong, not because there was some conflict between us, but because she'd decided I wasn't worthy of being part of this moment. And the worst part? The thing that really broke something in me? This was my stepsister's engagement party. Keisha and I had never been close, but we weren't enemies. We were just two teenagers forced into proximity by our parents' relationship, and she was going along with this plan to exclude me from celebrating one of the biggest moments of her life. She never once said, "Gloria, Tanya should be there." She never stood up for me. She just accepted that I wouldn't be there. When my dad came home, I didn't know how to tell him. But I had to. I went to his room and showed him that text message. I watched his face go through every emotion: confusion, anger, shame. I told him what Gloria said about the party being just a get-together. He sat on the edge of the bed and just put his head in his hands. He didn't defend her. That's important. He didn't try to make excuses. He just said, "I didn't know." And then he said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Tanya." But sorry doesn't change what was happening. Sorry doesn't make you unknow that someone in your family doesn't think you belong there. My dad went and confronted Gloria. I heard them arguing in their room. He asked her why she would do something like this. She made excuses about Keisha's feelings and the guest list being limited by venue size. She got defensive and said he never listened to her, that she was always the bad guy in his eyes. She turned it around on him. She made herself the victim. In the end, my dad told me I didn't have to go if I didn't want to. He said he'd figure it out, but I knew he wasn't going to leave Gloria. I knew he wasn't going to blow up his marriage over his daughter not being invited to a party, because that's what happens in these situations. The person in the middle tries to keep the peace, and the person being excluded is the one who has to absorb the hurt. I didn't go to the party, and yes, I could have shown up anyway, walked in there and made some big statement, but I wasn't going to force myself into a space where I wasn't wanted. I have more self-respect than that. Instead, I stayed at my mom's that weekend and pretended everything was fine when people asked me where I was. I didn't want the pity. I didn't want the questions. I didn't want anyone to know that my stepmother had decided I wasn't good enough to be part of my stepsister's engagement celebration. After that party happened, everything changed. I stopped going to my dad's house. Not in a dramatic way where I announced it or made a big deal. I just wasn't there anymore. My room stayed the same, my stuff stayed the same, but my presence was gone. And nobody really fought to change that except my dad. Gloria seemed relieved. Keisha didn't say anything. And my dad? He was caught between two worlds and didn't know how to bridge the gap. A few weeks later, Keisha tried to talk to me. She came to my mom's house one day. We sat in the living room and she apologized. But it was the kind of apology that doesn't fix anything. She said she felt bad about the party, that she didn't realize how much it would hurt me. But she knew. She absolutely knew. She just didn't care enough to do anything about it. I asked her why she never stood up and said, "My stepsister should be invited." And she couldn't give me a real answer. She just said her mom had made the decision, and it wasn't her place to fight it. Wasn't her place. It was her engagement party. If she couldn't stand up for me then, when exactly was she supposed to? The answer is, she wasn't. She was never going to stand up for me because, in her mind, I was never really her sister anyway. That hurt differently than what Gloria did, because Gloria was the stepmother. She was the outsider who married into my life. But Keisha? She was supposed to be my sister. We were supposed to be on the same team, even if we weren't close. And she chose loyalty to her mother over basic human kindness to me. What I realized in the months after that party was that Gloria's actions didn't happen in a vacuum. That one sentence, "It's just a get-together," didn't come out of nowhere. There was a whole foundation of resentment underneath it. Resentment about me living there, resentment about space and attention and resources, and probably resentment that my dad had a child from another woman. Maybe she'd been waiting for permission to exclude me, and Keisha's engagement party was the perfect opportunity. I started thinking about all the moments leading up to this, all the times Gloria made small comments, all the times she seemed frustrated with my presence, all the times she and my dad had conversations that stopped when I came around. I realized that this exclusion wasn't an accident. It was a culmination. It was the moment when she finally just said out loud what she'd been feeling all along: "I don't belong here." And the thing that really messes with you is wondering if she was right. If maybe I really didn't belong. If maybe I should have known better than to think I could be part of both families equally. If maybe I should have been content with my weekends and my separate room and my place as the outsider in my own father's house. But no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to internalize the cruelty of someone who resented me from the beginning. I'm not going to take her dismissal and turn it into proof that I was unworthy of being there. That's the trap. That's what happens when someone makes you feel excluded. You start believing you deserved it. Here's what I know now. Gloria had a choice. She could have invited me. A step-sibling is still a sibling. I'm still my dad's daughter. I was still part of that household. She could have made space for me, but she didn't. And that wasn't about me not being worthy. That was about her choosing not to make room for me. And those are two completely different things. My relationship with my dad got better over time, but it changed. We talk and we love each other, but there's this thing between us now. This reminder that he couldn't protect me from Gloria, that he couldn't make his marriage and his relationship with me work at the same time, and that's not entirely his fault, but it's something we both feel. I haven't been back to that house much since then. My room is probably exactly the way I left it, collecting dust, and I'm okay with that now. Because I realized that a house isn't a home if you're not wanted there, and a family isn't really family if they can erase you when it's convenient. What I want you to understand, if you're watching this and you've felt something similar, is that this happens more than people talk about. Blended families are complicated. Stepmothers and stepchildren can form real bonds, but they can also be the site of deep resentment, and sometimes that resentment wins. Sometimes you're invited to dinner but not to the big celebration. Sometimes you're part of the household but not part of the inner circle. Sometimes that one sentence reveals the truth about where you really stand. And the hardest part is accepting that and moving forward. It's not about revenge or proving them wrong. It's about understanding your own worth and knowing that someone else's inability to see it doesn't make it less real. Gloria's choice to exclude me hurt. Keisha's choice not to fight for me hurt. My dad's inability to fix it hurt, but I survived it. And I'm still here. I'm still worthy of love and belonging, even if I didn't get it in that house. So here's what I want to say to anyone going through something like this. Your family's rejection is not a reflection of your value. Their inability to make space for you is their limitation, not your fault. You can love people and still walk away from them. You can forgive them and still protect yourself from them. And you can move forward without needing them to suddenly realize what they lost. I'm telling this story because I want you to know you're not alone. If you've been erased by family, if you've been excluded and then made to feel like you overreacted, if someone used one sentence to tear down years of belonging, I see you, and I want you to know that what happened to you wasn't okay, and you're allowed to still be hurt by it. Thank you so much for letting me share this with you. This story has been heavy on my heart for a long time, and I'm grateful I finally had the space to tell it. If you've been through something similar, please share your story in the comments. Let's create a space where we're not pretending that blended families are always these beautiful coming together stories. Let's be real about the pain that happens when people choose not to make room for us. Please like this video if it hit something in you. Please subscribe if you want to hear more real stories about family, betrayal, and the messy stuff that happens behind closed doors. And check out my other videos where I talk about navigating complicated family dynamics, setting boundaries, and learning to love yourself when it feels like nobody else does. I'm so glad you were here for this. Keep taking care of yourself.